Mercedes-AMG is currently facing criticism from both fans and experts, both on and off the track, only 2 weeks into the season. The team, which previously dominated the sport until 2020, has experienced a disappointing start, with Lewis Hamilton and George Russell finishing in 5th and 7th place respectively. Hamilton had a 50-second gap to race leader Max Verstappen at the end of the race. Their car has yet to show significant improvements from the previous year's model, which only managed to secure 1 race win in the season. Mercedes is not satisfied with their position and has announced the changes they plan on making in an interview. In this video, I will discuss these changes and when we can expect these changes to happen. Mercedes experienced a lack of speed during preseason testing and the Bahrain Grand Prix due to issues with downforce, resulting in less grip than their competitors, particularly Ferrari and Red Bull. Consequently, their tires wore out faster, causing slower lap times. Toto Wolff, the team principal, acknowledged these difficulties and stated that the team would eventually close the gap with the leaders through modifications as the season progresses. Ultimately, we've got a lot of work to do. That gap in qualifying was quite large. We were over half a second to the front. In the race, that was even bigger, he stated. That was compounded by the fact that when you get the tire degradation, you get a bit more sliding. The tires run hotter, and you end up finding it very difficult to keep them under any kind of control. There is a lot that we need to understand, but the key things are really getting on top of that long-run degradation, which last year was a strong point for us. Clearly, we've got something that's not in the right place that we need to work on, but ultimately the other thing is that performance gap to the front. The raw pace of the car is not good enough. The team has also noted the problem in their side pod design and how Red Bull and Aston Martin, with a different concept than the rest, seem way faster. Trackside engineer director Andrew Shovlin talked about the tire degradation problem the team faced in Bahrain. The side pod used by Aston Martin seemed visually very similar to Red Bull's W14 and has shown excellent results. More teams are now looking towards changing their side pod design as well. What do you think? What changes does Mercedes need to improve their car? This means that Mercedes' hopes for a better year are not over yet, and as time goes on, they may see themselves closer to the competition than what Bahrain has proved. Ferrari's SF23 still seems to be riddled with reliability problems, with Leclerc's car halting to a stop in the middle of the Bahrain GP due to an electrical issue. This means that Mercedes may be able to beat Ferrari just based on reliability, as a car that finishes the race is already better than a car that does not. Furthermore, Mercedes also has the upper hand on Red Bull in terms of available wind tunnel time. In 2021, Red Bull was found to have breached the budget cap, resulting in a $7 million fine and a 10% reduction in their allowed time on the wind tunnel. As a consequence, they would only have access to 63% of the baseline time permitted for wind tunnel testing. This reduction in time could impact the pace of the team's development over the season and could see teams that have more wind tunnel time improve more than Red Bull. Mercedes is one of these teams and has 80% of the baseline time available on the wind tunnel. Mercedes also has the privilege of owning their own wind tunnel, which allows them to get a better hands-on experience in their car's development, unlike Aston Martin, which has to rely on Mercedes' wind tunnel for their car. Other teams like AlphaTauri also have to rely on other teams and companies for a wind tunnel. With Red Bull having lesser time in the wind tunnel and Ferrari facing reliability issues, Mercedes could sneak up on both teams and change the fate the company has faced for the last 2 years. The Saudi Grand Prix takes place on the fastest street track on the F1 calendar in Jeddah and could see a wholly different outcome as the more or less one-sided race in Bahrain. Due to the higher number of straights and fast corners, tire degradation in Jeddah is much lower than in Bahrain, and this could help Mercedes, who had the worst tire degradation in that race. Max Verstappen himself has confirmed the different setups in Jeddah and how they would affect the race's outcome. Saudi is quite a different track. You have a lot more like straights, fast corners, and a lot less degradation. And I think in Bahrain we were particularly good on the deg, so I do expect in terms of race pace that everyone is closer in Jeddah. What do you expect will be the results of the Saudi Grand Prix? Who will we see on the podium? Is it Red Bull, Ferrari, Mercedes, Aston Martin, or maybe a whole different team? After sending out a touching letter to its fans, Mercedes also stated in an interview the exact changes they plan on making this year and what effect they would have. Before I talk about them, please consider liking this video and subscribing if you enjoy our content. Now, continuing with the topic. In an interview, Andrew Shovlin mentioned Mercedes' plan with their new side pod design and the overall aerodynamic elements of the car. People have tended to use the word concept when they mean the side pod design, and Toto had said recently that we are looking at a revision that is going to come along in the next few races anyway, said Shovlin. Given the gap to the front, of course we are going to look at bigger departures and more radical changes, but those changes take time to turn into a faster solution in the wind tunnel. You can't do them overnight. There is quite a lot of development that you've got to do around any sort of big change in geometry in that area. Of course, we are looking at where we can improve the car. We are looking for potential to develop, and you will see visible changes coming on the car over the next few races. Furthermore, George Russell has also explained how Mercedes is going to follow the trend they showed in 2022, where their car overcame the problems it faced, like porpoising, and went from being in the middle of the track to getting back up at the top and even achieving a 1-2 in Brazil. He is confident that the team's tremendous rate of development could show Mercedes bouncing back to the top, with the changes scheduled for Imola in May. I think the way you saw our development last year with Mercedes was pretty spectacular over the course of the year, he commented. It is a very unique circuit in Bahrain, and I'll be surprised if the gaps are that large at other circuits. But I trust in our team, and if we develop at the same rate as we did last year, we're definitely starting from a higher point. But I think the good thing is there's not too many races at the start of the season, so it gives us some time to develop in the wind tunnel and back at the factory to fight for when the main block of races come, starting with the Azerbaijan Grand Prix in late April. Russell also believes that if the car manages to show the same amount of improvement as last year, the car could be on top of the podium as well. Last year, the revision to the W14 came very late into the season, and hence they could only win one race. However, if things go as Mercedes has planned, they could get more chances to win this year. When we look at where we were this time last year, we had so many problems with the car that we didn't know how to resolve, he explained. We thought we'd resolve them a little bit quicker than we did, maybe after 6 races. We thought we would resolve them, but realistically, it took until probably Austin until we took a big step forward. Now, we're starting from a base which is fundamentally a lot better than we were last year, so if we managed to achieve a race win last year starting from such a low point, there's no reason why we can't achieve more victories. But it is a relative game. Red Bull are looking really strong, and we've got a little bit of catching up to do. Although Mercedes had a rough start to the season, with the planned changes, they could very well turn their fate around. With more time in the wind tunnel and changes already under development at the Brackley factory, the car could only go up from where it is now. Still, the road for Mercedes is tough, and only time will tell what ends up with the company and whether it will be able to return to its former glory. The Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix is scheduled for the 21st of May. If all goes to plan, we will be able to see the second iteration of the W14 there on the track. Comment your thoughts on Mercedes' future plans and whether they will be effective. And if you enjoyed this video, subscribe to this channel for daily and up-to-date news regarding Formula One.